Hey, Cameron from Met at the Movies, once again bringing you my favorite films of the year. As I said, this year wasn't my favorite. It took a long time before we started getting movies that I regularly really got into. For a while, it looked like my best list was gonna just mainly consist of films that, in any other year, would just be honorable mentions. As I said, this was a year where I really wasn't just vibing with a lot of the popular horror films of the year. And there were some very well-received sequels that I didn't even see because, well, I didn't really like the original, so I didn't bother. The usual disclaimer, this is just my opinion. Some of these aren't necessarily the best made films of the year, they're just the ones that I enjoyed the most. And the sad disclaimer that since this is the good list, not the bad list, I probably don't have as much to say. Such is life. But first, let's get to those honorable mentions. Fall Guy. A fun action film that's also a very nice tribute to stunt actors and coordinators out there. Really sad that this one didn't do better. Here. When I was watching this film, I thought for certain I was watching a critical darling that was gonna pop up at a lot of award shows. Which is really weird considering I'm one of the few people who didn't like the biggest Zemeckis Tom Hanks team up. But I quite enjoyed watching this film. On more than one occasion, it kind of gave me the same feelings that Boyhood did, and it had some pretty clever editing throughout. I had a good time with this one. Heretic. Aside from Abigail and Late Night with the Devil, this was one of the few horror films that I did really get into this year. And I kinda just love seeing Hugh Grant playing villains more often now. From Paddington 2 to the Dungeons & Dragons movie to this, he's showing that he can play some very different villains. The movie's a little bit of a slow start with a lot of talking in circles, and I was expecting the dilemma to be more maze-like or escape room-oriented, but it's still a good suspenseful flick that has some very interesting conversations. My old ass. Older and younger selves conversing is always kind of an interesting thought, and I kind of like this movie's kind of more grounded approach in some of the direction it goes. Argyle. I liked this movie. I still remember walking out of the movie theater that night with my best movie buddy Josh and just being like, we both agree that this is the most fun we've had in the theaters in over 4 months, right? And then just being totally shocked at the low scores. I've seen some of the common complaints that people have for why they didn't like this film, and I can see how that could affect your viewing of it, but I don't know. Didn't bother me. I had a blast. Oh, right. I reserved a spot for Kung Fu Panda 4, but Fly Me to the Moon. The leads are great, the dialogue is very charming, and the retro production design is very fun too. Alright, and now here's my top 10 favorite films of 2024. Number 10, Hitman. Glad to see Richard Linklater and Skip Hollandsworth working together again after they did such a great job on the movie Bernie. But Hitman is something that's still kind of different for Linklater. It's a little bit more of a general crowd pleaser as opposed to his normal au naturel slice of life style. Which, to be clear, I'm not knocking either approach. He's done very well with both. A fun film that's kinda geniusly plotted, and Glenn Powell as the titular hitman gets to show his range between his different iterations of paid assassins. Definitely check this one out. Number 9. Horizon: An American Saga, Part 1. Now, I will admit for this one, I do have to question Kevin Costner's decision. Why pour so much money into making several 3-hour-plus westerns when westerns haven't been proven moneymakers or box office draws in years? And it does make me sad that his vision may not fully be seen because of it. That being said, having seen a lot of 3-hour films in theaters over the last couple years, this is the only one that I was able to get through easily. I enjoyed this one a lot more than I was expecting to. I love the wide variety of characters it gives us that are all in different walks of life, even if they're all from the same era. I love the scope, I love the relations, I love the landscapes. This movie has me excited for westerns again, even if they don't ever actually become prominent like they used to be. Would it have been more successful as a miniseries? Probably, but I'm still very happy we got this. Number 8. The Killer's Game. Kinda like Argyle, another action movie that kinda has me scratching my head on why it wasn't better received. If Blink Twice was the worst editing of the year, then this was probably the best. There's a lot of great transitions and match cuts throughout. Dave Bautista is perfect in the lead role, him and Sophia have really great chemistry, and I really enjoyed seeing Pom Klementieff play a very different role than I'm used to seeing her play in the MCU. I think she had a lot of fun with this one. The action is all gorily fun and has some creativity to it too. And between all the adrenaline-fueled scenes, I actually laughed a lot. And as someone who never really got into the John Wick films, I think I might have found my taste more with this film. Number 7. Saturday Night. Admittedly, I haven't been following SNL all that much since 2017, but I was into it for enough years that I was interested to see a take on how it all got started. There's a handful of moments that I didn't quite like the complete vilifying of the censor lady, and using that Mighty Mouse theme bit as a turning point when I never really understood what was funny about that sketch. Aside from that, though, there's a lot of jokes a minute, the impressions are all fantastic, and it moves at a fast enough pace all while there's mounting tension on what needs to happen in less than 2 hours. As someone who used to be really into SNL, I was very impressed with this. So for diehard SNL fans, I think this is a must-watch. Number 6. Inside Out 2. Pixar tends to not win me over as easily as they do for most moviegoers, but then again, they kind of haven't been winning over moviegoers as strongly as they used to in the last couple years. But I was excited for this one, and I did want it to be great. And I think they succeeded. They continued the possibilities with this setup. I loved seeing the growth that Joy has gone through from the last movie, and how the other emotions get to show their own range of emotions. None of them stay one note. The first Inside Out came out the year that I was really struggling with depression more than usual, so I really liked that there was this film that was saying it's okay to be sad sometimes. And this one came out the year that I had probably the most uncontrollable nights of anxiety that I have ever had in my life. So seeing this movie portray anxiety the way they did and its inner workings and how it can affect you, very topical for me and millions of others out there. On behalf of all of us, we really appreciated that. Number 5. The Wild Robot. For years, I said I've never been moved by the robots can make you feel something genre. Okay, I don't dislike the Iron Giant. Looks like I finally found one that worked for me. DreamWorks continues to use the storybook-style animation from The Last Wish and The Bad Guys to good effect. Seriously, there are so many shots in this film that I just want to screenshot and hang on a wall in my room. And not only is it nurturing and gentle, but it also does not shy away from the dark humor of just how vicious and cutthroat nature can be. All while giving us what is basically a better version of Migration. It's just nice to see DreamWorks get some recognition in a way that might actually lead to them getting some serious awards for the first time in a while. They have deserved that for a long time. Number 4. Challengers. For a while, I honestly wasn't sure if I actually liked this film or if I was just really impressed with the filmmaking. But I think I've talked myself into it. I do legitimately like this film. This was some of my favorite filmmaking of the year. Great camera work and editing. The adrenaline and energy that come off this film is just unkillable. I've never seen a film boil over with so much sexual tension when I don't think there's even an actual sex scene in the film. And in a year where more than once I kept coming across unlikable leads or co-leads, I'm always very impressed whenever I see characters that walk that very fine tightrope of being sympathetic without necessarily being likable. And this movie gave us 3 of those characters, and all 3 of them so well acted. And unlike Anora, me wondering who I'm supposed to be rooting for or what I wanted to even happen just kinda added to the tension. While watching it, I was really doubtful that they could craft an ending that would actually satisfy with the setup they had. And then they pulled it off. The ending is one of those that pleases the emotions more than it does your logic, but I just remember sitting in that theater feeling fully satisfied with it. Very impressive film. Number 3. Wicked Part 1. The long-awaited movie adaptation that did not disappoint. I was a high school drama club member back when the musical first came out, and even saw it on Broadway in 2008, so I was very excited to see just how they would tackle this adaptation when movie adaptations of popular musicals haven't always been doing well lately. I wasn't too worried about the casting of Ariana Grande as much as other people were, but I'm still blown away with just how much she throws herself into this role. She just looks like she is having the time of her life playing this. Cynthia Erivo was actually the more surprising casting choice for me, but having liked her performing and singing ever since Bad Times at the El Royale, I didn't have too much doubt, and she's definitely on her A game too. But I think more than anything, I am most impressed with director John M. Chu, who went from directing the Jim and the Holograms movie to this. You get the Most Improved award. Every time I see a bad musical movie adaptation, I keep saying that you need a director who is good at working with stylization and visuals. John M. Chu has officially proven that he can do both. Number 2, A Real Pain. I had a hunch I was gonna like this film, but I don't even think I knew I was gonna like it this much. This is the first film that Jesse Eisenberg has directed that I've seen, and it actually has me kind of excited to see some more of his in the future. And while he also gives a great sympathetic lead performance, a lot of this film does ride on Kieran Culkin's performance, who could have easily been too overbearing. And while he certainly does cross the line a couple times, it's within reason in a way that makes sense. I identify with both of them at different times, and the interactions really help. The Holocaust tour is very insightful and doesn't just take a back seat the entire time, and I also liked all the side characters. They all felt thoroughly fleshed out, like this film could have been about any of them. It's all handled so well that unlike some other films that I didn't like this year, I kind of don't mind as much that this film isn't so conclusive. It leaves a couple things hanging in the air, but for the most part though, I'm just happy being with these characters for the allotted runtime. Number 1, Ghostlight. I missed it in theaters, but my best movie buddy Josh did see it, and he later told me, I think you're gonna like this. But he also told me, stick with it for a little bit, you're not gonna like all the characters initially, but they do get better. And he was right about both. I loved this little film. Keith Kapfer gives a great central performance, and maybe it's just the theater major in me loving to see his character find sort of a therapy in his stage work, but it's very satisfying to witness. And the background of what his family has gone through is handled just perfectly. The slow but steady unfolding of information that gives us a clear picture over time really showcases the emotions that really been happening just under the surface the whole time. It's a simple but beautiful film about grief, but by the end of it, it does feel very rewarding. And it is my favorite film of 2024. And that's my favorites list. And now I want to hear from you. Leave a comment on what you liked or didn't like about this year. Whether some of your favorites were my least favorites, or my favorites your least favorites. I'm anticipating some movies in 2025, but I'm also hoping I get some nice surprises along the way. We'll see how that goes.